Welcome everybody. I'd like to introduce my faculty member, Joel Preddy. He is Associate Professor of Graphic Design and who will be motivator of today's lecture. And also behind the scene, we have T1 Lim, Assistant Professor of Graphic Design. So he's controlling all those buttons behind. So let me introduce Joel Preddy, and from here, Joel Preddy will take off.
All right, thank you, Phil. Okay, it's my pleasure to introduce Molly. Molly Oberholtzer is a human-centered designer who is currently working as a service designer at Denkwerk, a digital full-service agency in Köln, Germany. Her experience includes design research and using design methods to improve experiences in areas ranging from healthcare to professional development training. Through combining constructivist pedagogy and co-design games, she looks to foster learning moments and interactions that often translate into playful and subversive activities. Oberholtzer earned her bachelor's degree in fine arts in integrated design at the Parsons School of Design, and is currently pursuing a Master of Arts in Integrated Design in Köln International School of Design. And she's a lot of fun to talk to, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing what she has to say today. If you have questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat, and I'll keep a record of them, and I'll promote you to panelist at the end of the talk so that you can address Molly yourself. And now I hand you over to Molly. Hi, Molly.
Hello, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. That was also a really impressive German pronunciation there, the Denkwerk and the Köln, very nice. We don't have much time, so I will go ahead and get started. So I can't see you all, which is quite weird, but I'm really happy to be here. And first thing I want to say is the lecture is called At Your Service, the Design of Engaging Service Experiences. And I'm just gonna go over the basics. From one design student to another, first we're gonna talk about what does it mean to learn design. Then I wanna go over what is design. Then I'll explain what service design is. Then I will explain how a big part of service design is something known as co-design. And lest all of this get far too abstract and theoretical, I'm going to ground it by going over a recent project of mine, which was a service design competition. And interspersed throughout, I'm going to call your attention to key takeaways that I really wish had just been inserted into my brain when I was starting out as a design student. So, in fact, what I hope to impart is some advice that actually transcends being a design student and is helpful as you think about what it means to be a student, a professional, just a designer in general. So a bit about me. I got my bachelor's in New York City. I was attending Parsons, the New School for Design, which was an amazing experience full of eye-opening classes. And currently I'm finishing up my master's at Köln International School of Design in Germany, and I'm working full-time at a digital agency called Denkwerk. And so now, I want to call attention to this because you see these two settings on the left, and I want you to guess which better prepared me for the setting on the right. One had amazing computer labs and facilities and the whole shebang. The other had, and still has, wildly overgrown and abandoned plants. And while I learned so much from both settings, to be honest, the cheaper one, much cheaper one, is actually what better prepared me for working in the design agency that I work in today. Because it taught me that I have to find my own way. I have to make it myself. And that's what your first key takeaway is, that your education is what you make of it. It's on you. This is gonna be a hard semester, I imagine, with all of the Zoom classes and lectures, but you should know that no one's going to spoon feed you your learning. But you can handle this. What you need to do is just take action, take it into your own hands, hack it, rethink it, curate it, fashion it to meet your needs, because design is so diverse and there's so many options. So you have to really figure out what is right for you. Okay, and so now we can get to what is design. Welcome to a conversation that you will have a lot in your career. And all I can say for me is that it's not just about aesthetics, it's about creative problem solving. To explain, I'll point you towards this book, which describes and even attempts to define design by looking at it as a process. So this is getting off the high horse and saying, look, everyone designs. The teacher arranging desks for a discussion, the entrepreneur planning a business, the team building a rocket. All of that is design. That is to say, it's not just making things beautiful or using certain tools or programs or specific skills that you can put on your CV. It's a mindset. Now that said, if you have some skills, that's a good place to start. In fact, that's how I started. So this was me when I started freshman year. I was pretty handy with photoshopping and layout and sketching, and I could do some video editing, and I thought I had like a fairly decent eye for design. But what was more important and what has actually stuck with me as being the most helpful was less obvious. It was about my way of looking at things. It was what was motivating me as a designer, why I could never imagine doing anything but design. So for me, design was a way to communicate, to talk through and with objects and images and representations. And what I could create could speak and say more volumes, far more than I could. Designing anything felt like a puzzle to me. It was always about translation and problem solving. And the puzzle was to see who are you communicating to, what do you want to communicate, and then you choose what medium do you shape that communication into or with. Which is why in classes where I was starting to learn coding and typography, very medium specific and output driven classes, I got bored quite quickly. It was very much about designing objects, and somehow that wasn't for me. I wanted to think less about the object or the interface or the poster at hand, and I wanted to think more about the person who was using it. You know, like what were they thinking? What were they doing? What were they feeling? So traditional design has you kind of thinking right here. You're thinking about the object, the designed object, and or the designed artifact, and maybe you're thinking about the person and their interaction with the object. But I was always thinking back here. So like, why did they discover this object? What do they expect from it? And do I want to subvert or do I want to meet those expectations? Or maybe I was thinking ahead and I was thinking, well, what are they going to do with the object afterwards? How does it live on? How does it recall the experience the person had with it? Not to mention, you know, what are the ethics? What does this design mean to society? And what does it represent to the individual who's participating in the norms and the mechanisms of society? And lo and behold, all of that is basically service design. So service design, it is a process by which designers create solutions and design interactions that address user needs. It is a way of approaching a problem that focuses on user research, and it uses collaborative design practices, so that's co-design or participatory design, to create solutions. And not all designed objects are services, but often a service design involves many objects, which are called touchpoints. Often you see service design in what is clearly service industries, which you can most commonly think of as healthcare, transportation, housing, banking, education, entertainment, and so on. I'm sure you can think of many services that you use in your daily life. Generally, you know, it's a service when it takes place over time. That by default tends to make it more complex. And it's made up of then a network of many things. There's people, objects, environments, messages, and systems, and it's all interwoven to create a holistic designed experience. And when designing these experiences, you're doing research with the users and you're looking at emotional journeys over time. That's so that you can map their journey and spot pain points, i.e. struggle or friction problems, and then you can turn those into opportunity spaces. And so opportunity spaces are when you've mapped it out and you see the chance to insert a designed object in order to either alleviate a pain or to amplify or elevate a gain. So you see, you're not starting from a known outcome. You don't know that this is going to be a certain medium or something that's coded. You're starting by mapping the journey from start to finish to find opportunities where you can insert design that will make the maximum impact. And what you insert depends on the research in that area. What will fit best to meet your goal. So what removes a pain at different spots could be an app, it could be a poster, or it could be something else entirely. For example, say that the pain is that you want people to go outside and enjoy the park, but do it in a socially distant way. You might design something like this. It's not a traditional designed object like a poster, but it's a designed experience that problem solves. It's part of a larger recreational service from the Parks and Recreation Department of, I believe it's New York City. And now this is not to knock poster design. Sometimes that is exactly what is needed. Say that the pain is that there is nationalism and Islamophobia in the United States. And in that situation, a poster is a great solution. A poster speaks the language of democracy, and it's an easy way to spread awareness and convey a complex message in a simple way. If we had mapped out a journey, this touch point might go in the discovery phase of someone finding awareness and becoming politically active. The point I'm trying to drive home is that you're not designing from a place where you know your medium, because you're injecting these design solutions in at different and possibly multiple stages. So service design means designing only after mapping out this problem space with research, finding the pain points, and then determining what the solution or solutions might be. So in a nutshell, it's designing it with this core, the why. So why does this matter? Then you can go to the next layer, how. How should it be delivered? What's the tone, style, the voice? Finally, you can get concrete and get to the final layer of what. What does the design look like? What kind of an object, service, product, or experience is it? So get to the why. Get to the why is my next key takeaway. Even if you don't go into service design, any design can start with this ethos. Do good research and be able to answer the question in all of your design. Why does this matter? Why is this important? Super simple. Okay, so figuring out the why is important when designing for something where the outcome isn't yet defined. My first service design project came my freshman year in college, and it was for an outpatient chemotherapy center in Brooklyn. We were not handed an outcome or an expectation. We were simply asked to improve the outpatient chemotherapy experience. We had to develop our own solutions and our own definition of what needed to be improved. And what you can see here is just like a screen grab from the final prototype that we developed. It was a short video that conveyed our design concept as a prototype. And now the architects and the landscape architects in the audience will understand this. You can't build your final outcome as you're a student. You're just representing it. It is a prototype. And for prototyping services and illustrating the interactions within a service, this often means telling a story. So for the prototype, we used Playmobil to illustrate our final concept, which was a do-it-yourself tea station and an herb garden in the waiting room space in order to provide a sense of comfort and nourishment and growth. Nice, right? So to be clear, we submitted a prototype as the final project. And here you see another use of prototyping I did for an insurance company about 2 years ago. This time we're prototyping midway. We don't want to build an app yet because we're still in the brainstorming process, but we're playing with the idea. So one person on the left here, she is role-playing as the digital service, a computer, a chatbot, and one person is role-playing as the user. And this is an effective way to explore an idea without committing to spending the time to make the screens and code it and make it beautiful, etc. So we use prototyping to improve our discussions around the solution or a possible solution and work better as a team. Because as IDEO has said so well here, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, a prototype is worth 1,000 meetings. And this is So true. And I recommend that your prototypes be more like the latter version. You want to prototype often and fail sooner. For example, I will share my failure to drive home this point. That planting space we proposed for the chemotherapy center. Well, if we had presented our prototype to the stakeholders a little sooner, we could have gotten their feedback. And we would have learned the key problem with our proposal is that for patients undergoing chemotherapy, you have low white blood cell counts. And so being around dirty things like plants can be really unadvised. You're not supposed to do that. So, whoops. So there's my key takeaway there. Prototype often. Make the prototype messier than you think it should be. A messy prototype can still communicate more than paragraphs of text. And I would say this, especially if you're on a team with language barriers, stop talking at each other. Don't talk at each other, show. Show, don't tell. And you guys all have the advantage because you're creative and you're likely starting from a place where you have lots of skills and visualization, so you should use them. Show, don't tell, and you can get really valuable input from your team and stakeholders. Speaking of teamwork, maybe this makes, Speaking of teamwork, if you want to design experiences, you need a team. The role of a service designer is often similar to that of a design director or a project manager. It's like an orchestra. We're all working together, but somebody's leading and has an eye for the big picture. And in order to execute solutions accordingly, you often work in collaboration with maybe a visual designer or a user experience designer or a developer or even a business person. So the big takeaway here is that teamwork is a key skill. No matter what kind of designer you become, if you think service design is not important or whatever, you want teamwork. You don't want to be a hero. I've known really smart designers who are also hardworking designers, and they're better than me, but they are bad at teamwork. And that has really held them back in their careers. So you've got this chance now in your student life to get good at saying who does what, get good at dividing tasks and collaborating and critiquing and connecting. And you're going to need that more than anything in the real world. So teamwork brings me to the next area of design that I want to mention, which is a key part of service design, which is working together with your end users, collaborating and co-creating with the very populations you're designing for. And that is co-design. So co-design is a well-established approach to creative practice, particularly within the public sector. It's not limited to service design, but it's characteristic of it. It has roots in the participatory design techniques developed in Scandinavia in the 1970s. And co-design is often used as an umbrella term for participatory, co-creation, or open design processes. So while the classical model is on the left here, you've got a researcher who looks at the users and develops insights and then creates a report that they give to the designer. And the report says exactly what their output should be and what it should do. Versus on the right, you see co-design. And this is where the user, the designer, the researcher, they're all working with the same materials in the same space to create something together. No, it's not as simple as it looks, because as a designer, you have to design that collaboration itself, which is hard, but it's worth the effort. Especially when it comes to the design of big things that are used by many people, like public spaces or public housing. You want to involve the end users because they're the ones who will be using it. For the people, by the people. I find architect Alejandro Aravena very inspiring in this category. So Aravena is best known for creating half of a good house, or low-cost social and emergency dwellings, which can be finished, extended, and developed by their inhabitants. And he's turning this series of concrete blocks with their input. They fill in the rest as they see fit. It turns it into a set of well-loved and unique homes. And Aravena's architectural philosophy is to bring the community into the process. And that's the same as co-design. So now this participation can be hard to orchestrate. And that's why I like to turn to my favorite method, which is co-design games, which is a lot like it sounds. When it's done well, it can help you get to deeper truths. So to illustrate the comparison, for example, you could ask someone, what is your sense of humor? And you're doing this in an interview and you're kind of interrogating them, and you demand an answer and you hope that they cooperate and that they know themselves and can tell you. Or you could play Cards Against Humanity with them, and then you just kind of learn their sense of humor by default. In more technical terms, co-design games are when the means for reaching your research or design objectives are drawn from both design practices, so there's mock-ups and there's user representations, but it's also drawn from the world of games. So there's role-playing, there's turn-taking, and there's make-believe, in order to deliberately trigger participants' imaginations as a source of design ideas. In more practical terms, to explain what can look and feel like, well, it can be a lot like kindergarten. The designer chooses the materials, sets the schedule, and tells the participants what to do. And after a session of doing, they may lead a discussion to reflect on, well, what did we just do? And at the end of the day, the outcome will look something like what the designer wanted to create, but it's made up with all of the input of the stakeholders and the end users. So in designing experiences, these are my grounding principles and ways of doing, thinking, and designing. Because I work in service design, I find these ways of thinking to be most helpful. So now I'm going to just go over a recent competition that I participated in, and I'm going to take you from start to finish and then wrap it up with the takeaways, and we can get into Q&A. So in January of 2020, I began in the Student Service Design Challenge competition run by Philips and in collaboration with partners like IBM and Volkswagen. And the brief for this 5-month project was, how can we improve the heart health of people in Europe that are invisible, neglected, underserved, forgotten, or overlooked? Phew, no biggie, right? Did I mention that service designers love wicked big problems, right? So that's that brief, that's too big. We did the most important first step. We did some desk research looking into the problem space, and then we reframed it. So within our desk research, we found that unhealthy lifestyles such as smoking, increased alcohol consumption, and obesity, they increase the risk of developing heart disease and comorbidities, will increase the visibility of the disease. In fact, we found that the probability of dying from heart disease is 2 to 4 times higher with people who have diabetes. We also saw that Turkish migrants, a large population living in Germany, have higher than average rates of type 2 diabetes worldwide. And we realized that the Turkish migrant populations in Germany, they experience not only the genetic and cultural predispositions to the disease, but also as migrants, they're an often overlooked risk group, lacking the quality of healthcare provided for the rest of the population. So we reframed our brief as, how might we prevent Turkish migrants from getting type 2 diabetes by increasing awareness of lifestyle factors that lead to this behavioral disease? So the big takeaway here is that you should always reframe your problem. Remember co-design, for example. You want to be able to access and work with the people that you are designing for. So we had access to the local Turkish migrant community since one of our team members not only lived in the predominantly Turkish neighborhood, but also was a second-generation Turkish migrant himself. So we had access. Finally, we narrowed down heart disease to something more specific and tangible, that is diabetes. Diabetes on its own is still a huge topic. So we spoke with endocrinologists, which is diabetes experts, and based on their feedback, we chose to focus on awareness and prevention rather than disease management. All right, so then we got to our research, which is moving past desk research to do firsthand research. And I won't go over every method, but here's a quick summary. We did interviews with medical experts. We interviewed people living with diabetes. We did surveys for people with diabetes and people with pre-diabetes. We did kitchen tours, co-created user journeys, and we did 2-week-long food diaries. And the key finding again and again was that while on paper, type 2 diabetes was all about good and bad behaviors, that we really needed to get past simply telling people what to do what was good, what was bad. So I wish we had a poll right now because I would love to ask you all, I'll just ask you and you can just answer in your head. Do you think you're fairly healthy? Like yes or no? I'm a pretty healthy person, right? Yeah, so think about that. Well, so the cool thing is, an interesting thing, most of the people we interviewed that had prediabetes and had diabetes, they also thought they were pretty healthy. You know, which is why we do research, to really get to the truth. So for the food diaries, truth was the goal. We had participants send us a photo of their every meal, which was more informative about their actual behaviors than any conversation. It gave us the chance to spot patterns and changes. And then, for example, we had one incredibly healthy user. We were all impressed. She even made protein shakes and she meal prepped for her week. But then one weekend we got this picture, which was just like, wait, what? Anyway, so from a research perspective, this was great. This was a topic we wouldn't have gotten to in the standard interview or conversation. So we called her up and we talked about it. And it turns out she had gone out the night before. She had a few drinks and this is her hangover meal. And so all the people that just claim internally that they're a fairly healthy person, I want you to kind of reflect and be like, do I have a hangover meal? And if you don't drink, you know, maybe you've got a meal that you have when you're feeling a little blue. So doing the diaries allowed us to see the kind of reality that too often isn't brought into the apps that are like meal tracking and health tracking that expect this sort of robotic perfection from us. Because as you can see, even a very healthy person occasionally, quote unquote, messes up. We install the apps that kind of harass us and chastise us. And by looking at our behavior overall, we can see that it's not good, it's not bad, it's not messing up, it's just human. We also learned that she ate less healthy when she was in a group at work when she was going to lunch because she just wanted to go with the flow, eat with everyone else. And this finding was validated by another user as well, who would always bring a cake to every social gathering. And of course, when people came over, she would have a cake for them because it wasn't a social event if there wasn't sugar involved. And here you can see an online remote co-creation session we did with stakeholders. And this was, you know, creating a lot of ideas and discussing things, and it allowed us to confirm and discuss a lot of our findings, such as we eat unhealthier together. And other interesting findings were that people think they're healthy when, you know, maybe they're not. And everyone's definition of good or bad was different. We also found that people tend to eat similar to their parents. How we eat is such a daily and deeply ingrained behavior. And we pick it up and we lock it in starting from a very young age. And so maybe you're starting to realize what we are concluding, that this isn't something that a single designed object can really change overnight. Habits formed since birth aren't gonna course correct just because you made an app for it. But we were getting a clearer picture of our demographic through these interviews, through the diary studies and the tours and the co-design sessions. We knew that our main user was unaware that they were at risk. Even if they had relatives with diabetes, which they often did, they didn't think that it would affect them now. They wanted to be healthy, but they also didn't want to have to think about it. And they didn't think it was a really big deal. So we knew them, but we also had like a designer's hunch building. This wasn't just about the users, the people at risk for diabetes. It was also about the beast itself, diabetes. And so we needed to work from its perspective. So please meet our diabetes persona. Diabetes. So personas let you explore research and gain new understanding of what you're designing for. And we realized that we were designing for two. For the person at risk for diabetes and also for diabetes, who was looking for someone to spend the rest of their life with. So in addition to a persona, we wanted to make a journey map for diabetes. And journey mapping is a collaborative method where you interview someone and you go step by step looking at the experience over time. Like I explained earlier, you look at what they do and you're asking about how they felt and what they were thinking. For example, you know, when they're diagnosed with diabetes and when they're living with it afterwards. So to do the journey for diabetes, we did the journey mapping process with a medical professional, and we learned a lot. And so in that conversation, we came to a new understanding together. One is that doctors need to give recommendations for diagnosed patients by realizing where they are at now. And this is a challenge, and it's very personalized. Everyone's health literacy is in a different place. For example, sometimes it means explaining very basic things like just walking won't count as exercise if your heart rate doesn't go up. And then 2, diabetes is like a toxic relationship. So bear with us. This came out of a long journey mapping conversation where we discussed what diabetes is and how it relates to the person. Go back? Okay. Diabetes is the living embodiment of your guilty pleasures. It is the manifestation of what you enjoy in life and indulge in, type 2 that is. But the fact is it's bad for you. And it's like you're stuck in this toxic relationship with your bad habits. So we're addicted to sugar and high fat, but we need support and help to break up with our relationship with our worst self. So we did some more research and realized that people living with diabetes, they did the same. This was one person, how they represented their diabetes. They expressed that their relationship is this kind of, it's a part of them. The only way they could talk about their disease was by explaining it as a person that lived with them, someone who, maybe tortured them, but was a part of them. And when things are so deeply ingrained, such a part of you, that's where behavior change in psychology comes in. So a lot of what was shown in science had also become evident in our qualitative research, which is really good because then you're doing something called triangulating your research, making sure it all checks and connects in different places. But if we remember that really healthy woman who ate less healthy during lunch with her coworkers, that's about social deviance. We don't want to deviate from the crowd. It's also, why she ate this unhealthy with her coworkers. It's why sometimes students on campus all dress the same. We just want to conform. We want to get along. It's also why it's so hard for people living with diabetes to do social things and to say no to peer pressure and social events that are often linked to unhealthier eating. So they keep quiet and they keep their disease to themselves, which actually prevents awareness. Behaviors are especially important to change because we learned that type 2 diabetes is what's known as a social disease. And the truth is that having positive influences around you really matters. Epidemiologists have shown that good behavior like smoking or eating healthy, it passes from friend to friend as if it was contagious. And the same is true of bad behaviors. Clusters of friends and families will infect each other with obesity, unhappiness, or tobacco consumption. And this results in families or even entire communities being at risk. So to take action that goes against such ingrained behaviors, you need key players to make changes where it's still possible. And we were by no means behavioral change experts, but we were inspired by the idea of anchoring that we found in literature. So that's when you link the desired behavior change to an existing ingrained behavior. For example, when I studied German, I give myself a German beer so that the annoying task of language learning is linked to something I enjoy. And it really doesn't matter this way what's good behavior and what's bad behavior and labeling it as such, because what matters is saying, hey, this is your behavior. We see where you are and we can help you with tiny steps and anchoring to get you where you want to be. So motivation is a funny thing. We know that reminders and annoying notifications don't work. In behavioral science, motivation is often reduced to either the carrot or the stick. The carrot is the rewards, the stick is the punishment. Many say that the fear of the stick is actually more motivating. And so we took that a step further and explored the idea of how we are motivated to make changes in ourselves. And we realized that it's often not a role model. Sometimes the biggest motivation to change is seeing someone act in ways that show you how you don't want to be. And that's the power of the anti-hero. So now I'll present our solution, which is built around our anti-hero, an AI bot named PD, who in the app would act out a short love affair with the user in order to take them on a special journey of enlightenment, where they realize that diabetes is like a toxic relationship that they need to be aware of and watch out for. So Act 1 is falling in love. PD, and that's short for pre-diabetes, by the way. And the user will meet cute, and PD would make sure to like everything that they like. They love what you love, and they encourage what you do, at least the unhealthy bits. They're happy to help you order food with your Netflix, bake a cake, but they start to get a little sassy when you exercise a lot. And over a series of interactions, they become increasingly obviously toxic, like a real toxic relationship. Act 2 is the realization, when the user realizes PD's true self and they are presented with the opportunity to break up with them, empowered with the facts of their behavior patterns and how they changed based on PD's influence. So how PD brought out the worst in them, how they ate dessert twice as often because PD suggested it with her or his toxic influence. And now I'm going to pause for a quick takeaway here because this one's big but simple. Make it engaging. You can tell people that they're easily affected by the eating habits of those around them, or you can take them on an interactive journey with an AI personality and show them. And guess which one of those is going to stick more? So, Act 3 is the introduction of a new and positive influence. That's BB for better behaviors. Again, not good, not bad, just better. So BB acts like PD did, suggesting recipes and helping you out like an assistant on your phone, but knows a bit more about your current habits. And that allows them to better anchor to your existing habits in order to suggest new ones. It allows them to make new, slightly healthier suggestions. And underneath this interactive experience and story brought to life, it's still a simple app service that tracks patterns in your habits and uses machine learning to make suggestions from a database of recipes and exercise activities. That is, it's UX and it's UI design, which means developing an app, which means lots of testing. So here you see some of the wireframes we started with. We tested with users and we iterated the language, the interactions, and the learning moments. We also analyzed our health conscious and unhealthy extreme users and compared their responses. We got feedback. Here you can see some survey for the voice and the personality of the AI itself. And that allowed us to kind of calibrate its look and feel to make it more universally appealing. And we realized that while healthier users would quickly understand and skip ahead to meeting BB, the least healthy users might need more help. So if a user insists on staying with PD, they will find that PD gets diabetes, requires care, and then BB comes in and stages an intervention. And so in the end, the perfect is the enemy of the good. And you don't need other people to tell you what to do, to say this is good, do this, not this is bad. You're not a dog. So this app is for the human that's just trying to be a little bit better. And here we see lots of prototyping and testing that out. Yeah. You can't hear it apparently, but for example, she was just saying like, yes, like there's a lot of responses of, yeah, why not? So in the end, what we did was we made an app. But what we were selling, what people are getting is more than an app. It's not an app, it's the story of breaking up with your toxic bad habits. And the big takeaway here is you should use stories. You wanna get really good at storytelling, and big brands know this already. For example, Nike isn't selling athletic wear, they're selling action. Just do it. And again, and since this talk is about making things engaging, I will repeat this takeaway. It's not just the app experience that you want to be engaging, it's the research, the knowledge sharing, the everything. You want to engage the people that you want things from. If you want a good interview, engage them with good questions. If you want a strong team, make everyone feel like they're a part of it. Engage people, activate them, and you'll be happy you did it, and your design will be better for it. Final thoughts. I've known a lot of graphic designers that have turned towards service design because it intuitively feels right, how they problem solve and how they think about solutions. Sometimes it just feels too hard to ignore that research and the context there. But whatever field you're in and headed towards or passionate about, the work that you do will probably cover lots of different areas. In the past, at Denkwerk, this digital agency, I've worked on design for voice, the Internet of Things, and smart homes. Interestingly enough, designing for voice also means designing for screens, since many voice assistants also have companion apps and graphic user interfaces that are needed at the very least for the setup. I've also designed using voice as a solution, thinking about how to assist caregivers of people who are living with dementia. I've also developed a co-design game method that I'm really happy with. It's based on my side passion, role-playing games, and it lets teams learn and share research with each other in a role-playing game format. And without going into too much detail, because I did the math, that would take an entirely separate giant talk, I can say that the game lets people get past their biases and explore new ideas and perspectives and share research and create new stories within the research. And it's just a whole lot of fun. Which leads me to my final takeaway, which is get personal. Do not be afraid of bringing your personal world into your professional world, because your design will be better for it. Design is one of the fields that is richer for exploring and kind of stealing from other external influences or professions. It's always dipping into the scientific method here for imitating biology over here. And so you should really look to your interests for inspiration. And in the end, you'll find it's often not one object that's the solution. It's a network of objects and interactions, which is both intense but also really rewarding. That's designed for me. And I'll bet you that no matter where you go in your career or where you are already, for the professionals out there, design that you'll be doing in the future is likely to be similar to this. And on that journey, I hope you'll enjoy the summarized version of these key takeaways here. So I'm gonna pause a minute, maybe you can screenshot it so that you don't forget that it's on you. You should get to the why, always teamwork, prototype everything, reframe it, tell a story, engage people, and don't be afraid to get personal. And finally, I heard that many of the students here are drawn to design for social change, for big human-centered design impact, which is awesome. I am so excited to see what you all come up with, and I hope you can be inspired by some of the words of someone who's far more eloquent than I, Rebecca Solnit, from her recent whose story is it? Where she says, positive social change results from connecting more deeply to the people around you rather than rising above them, from coordinated rather than solo action. And among the virtues that matter are listening, respect, patience, negotiation, strategic planning, and storytelling. And with that, I'm looking forward to your questions. And of course, here is my email if you would like to reach out. And thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Molly. If you would like to ask a question, please pop your name into the chat and I will open it up to you so you can address her. And while we're waiting for that to percolate, I know you said it's too deep to really go into, but could you give us a little bit more about the game development project?
Absolutely. So let's see. So you're doing this research work, and you just time and time again, I found that you do so much work and so much gets lost. You forget insights. You create a persona, and it just acts as a poster and hangs on the wall, and you don't use it. So I sought to create this really interactive experience based on active learning, that when you have to take action and role play as a user, that you would remember more and connect more deeply with them and be able to sort of think more about them in the design process.
Thank you. Thomas Wong has a question. Thomas, would you like to ask that?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I wanted to ask, in your co-design process, what sort of collaboration tools do you like, do you use, and you find best for that process?
Mm-hmm. Let's see. I mean, if you want to think about, okay, so then there's the whole question of like, what's a tool versus what's a method? And I'm going to answer first with a method. I love design sprints. They're wonderful. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but it's just a really efficient process. It's a series of tools used in sequence to really get you to focus on a problem, and this really democratic way to get everybody on board and feel like they've participated in the same idea. So the design sprint as a process, I would say, is something I really like to use and really like. In terms of tools themselves, and to answer the question below it, what software, Mural is quite good. Mural and Miro are both interactive remote collaboration whiteboard softwares, and they're really nice for voting. So also with co-design, you're often putting a lot of things and a lot of ideas out there. So you're gathering a lot of input and then you're synthesizing it and you're voting on what's most important. And so you have to vote. And normally in an in-person session, the voting is always biased because often people will see who voted for what, and then we start to group think and you're like, oh, there's a lot of votes on that one, I should do that. But because it's online and remote, they've actually developed the software in a way that nobody sees other people's votes, and then you can time it and you reveal the votes and it's not biased at all, which is really nice. In other tools, I think it really depends on what you're designing. I really like to make custom tools and kind of modify and do it bespoke for the design project itself, which, you know, isn't an easy answer, but it's, I think, the most effective.
Great, thank you very much.
Kellyanne, your question was addressed, but do you want to follow up on it?
Hi, hi Molly, good to see you. Way over there in Germany, that's so cool. So it's a whiteboard software. Are you familiar with Concept Board? Have you tried that? That's one that we've started using. And did you say Miro? I heard Mural, M-U-R-E-L. Is the other one M-I-R-O? What's the other one you mentioned?
Miro and Mural. Well, I think I just sent that to all panelists, but you can.
Okay, great, thank you.
There's some free trials for them. They're free for students, which is great. At least Mural is free for students right now. I haven't tried the one that you mentioned. For me, what I like to track is, the voting. Is it an easy interface? So if you're doing co-design, you're often just getting like random participants that, you know, designers tend to be really comfortable with all the technologies and like we pick it up quickly. But if you're trying to interview, say, like, for example, Turkish migrants who aren't necessarily very technology literate, you want a super easy software. So Mural was quite easy for people to pick up, whereas Miro has more design tools built in, but it's less intuitive. So Miro is good more for like I use Miro at work for lots of collaboration, but for co-design with people that aren't very tech savvy, I would say Mural is better.
That sounds cool. It's actually could be an interesting little quick research study to do to compare the use of the 2 or 3 of these with the different populations and really see. And so Concept Board, one of the things we've loved about it is you could have this huge whiteboard, and maybe the other ones are the same way, that you could have multiple mock-ups. But I won't go on and on, but actually it's interesting. Concept Board is a German company, as it turns out. They're based out of Germany.
Oh, wow, I'll have to check it out.
Well, thanks for the information, the differences about Mural and Miro. That's really helpful. Take care.
Thank you. Robert Purnell has a question.
So
I can read the question if Robert's having trouble with sound. How much effort do you put into convincing a client towards what you are particularly good at versus what you perceive they want, like a hammer and nail scenario?
right, so what's the saying that to a carpenter every no, I'm messing it up.
If you have a hammer, every problem
Well,
looks like a nail.
Uh-huh.
right. If all you have is the hammer, every problem looks like a nail.
Um, hmm. I would say again, it comes down to also hi Rob. It comes down to showing, not telling. I think whenever you are ending up just telling somebody that you're good at something, it's not going to work. You really have to like put it on the table and show them. And I think design sprints actually, this is going to sound, you can really show, you can kind of direct people's idea of what the solution could be based off what you put in front of them. Like you get to provide the inspiration, like the materials and the settings. So if you want them to think about a different solution, like they keep saying like, no, we want an app. And you're like, oh, you really don't need an app. Then in the co-design process, you would show them for inspiration, and like an inspiration gathering moment and sharing, you would show them some examples of like, oh, here's a poster campaign, or here's just an event they hosted. Here are some other solutions to kind of like subversively put that in there.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from the attendees?
Thank you, Molly, having a wonderful presentation today. One question I have is that, one of the reasons I invite you for this lecture is that you are such a young designers. And then we are in an institution that we have a lot of students comes to here to be our graphic designers. What are the competencies or skill set you think that would be very beneficial for them? I know we are really producing quality students. They know they design beautiful posters and beautiful design. But beside that, do you have any suggestion for our students to learn as a new competencies? Mm-hmm. Any design research method that you wish they have?
I mean, I definitely hit on a few of the things that I think are important, like definitely teamwork. Always useful. The bigger the things are that we end up designing, the more you need teamwork. And within teamwork, you really need communication. And so a basic one is just sketching, being able to sketch your idea rather than, and then talk it through. That's really important. I heard recently one thing that kind of stuck with me that right now what you need to learn as a skill is to be good at learning. Because it's going to change, the tools are changing so much faster than anyone can keep up with. So you just need to be ready to, and confident when you're exploring new software and trying new things and using the skills you have, but realizing that it's going to change. So you have to keep learning.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent answers. And I think that's it for the questions. So we'll wrap things up. Molly, thank you again for this really inspiring lecture here. Thank you for all our attendees for the excellent questions you asked. And this is normally where we would applaud, but that doesn't work so well in this context. But just imagine the hurrah! And thank you again. And I guess that's it. Have a good day, everybody.
Yep, good night.
Phil, did you have anything you wanted to say at the end?
No, I think that this has been a great presentation, and I see a great participant today. And thanks, everyone. Hope that we're going to get some nice weather so that we can get some fresh air. Have a great weekend, everyone.